Hello, I'm Kathleen Carlson. Today I wanted to tell the story of how I came to sing the Medicine Buddha mantra. So this is a well-known mantra. The one that I sing is a melody that I wrote myself, but the mantra itself is a traditional mantra, and I think is pretty well known in the Buddhist world. It comes from the Buddhist tradition. But my discovery of that mantra and my use of that mantra became very personal very quickly. So I've told this story in some of my kirtan events, mantra events, workshops, but I've never really put it on tape. I do have the story written out on my website, but it's so much nicer to watch a video, at least for me. I would always want to watch a video before reading something on somebody's website. So here we go. I have 5 children, and my youngest son came to me at the end of August in 2020, right at the height of COVID, when everyone was trying to figure out what was going on. And he said that he had a cyst on his back. So he wouldn't show it to me, but he took a photo. I looked at the photo and immediately said, "Get your shoes. We are going to urgent care." It looked terrible. It was, yellow and red. I just won't even describe it. So we go into urgent care, and the nurse took a look at it. Now I'm sitting down. My son, of course, is on the examination table. I'm not looking at this because, this is at the bottom of his spine. So, his rear end is exposed, and I'm just being respectful. So I hadn't seen it, and they called in the doctor. The doctor said that she needed to lance it and see what she could do to clean it out, needed to prescribe antibiotics. And when she was done with all of that, which was pretty painful for my son, they used lidocaine, but still, it was pretty painful. So she brought me paperwork at the end and said, here's a referral to a general surgeon. I said, "A general surgeon? You mean like an operating room?" I thought it's just a cyst. She said, "This has been going on for months. This is not a new thing." I said, "Well, I found out about it an hour ago, so, sorry if I'm a little shocked." So we went home. I got an immediate referral to the surgeon. We were there a couple days later. I had my husband come with me because I didn't want to make major medical decisions, without my husband being involved. So my husband and I and my son went to the doctor's office, and the doctor got him into a hospital gown and took a look at it and said, "We need to move to a different room." And as we're moving to a different room, he's calling a nurse to assist him, and I'm thinking, what is going on here? It was a room that had like surgical lights over the table. It was a big room, enough room for him to have several assistants. I'm thinking, good Lord. So he took a look at it and he said, "All right, well, this is going to require 2 surgeries. We're going to have to first try to get rid of the infection. Then I'm going to need to do surgery to remove whatever's remaining of the infection. And then we will have to have a surgery to remove all of the cysts." So now we're talking about more than one. My husband and I are still sitting there, stunned. And he said, "Have you seen this?" I said, "No." And he said, "Come here." We got up and it was a shock. He had a series of cysts, they think probably 5, that went from just under the tip of the tailbone almost down to the rectum. They had grown together. They were all infected. If they, squirted water, antibiotics, medication, or whatever in the top, it was coming out the bottom. Like it was a system in there. It was quite extensive. The doctor said that, he told me later that he'd never seen a case that was this bad. So we were told that we should come in every day, and they would pack it with antibiotics to try to get it to the point where they could do surgery without the danger. You don't want to do surgery when there's infection because it could spread. So every day after school, I would pick up my son. We would go there, and this went on for about 3 weeks. By the time we hit 3 weeks, I was getting completely stressed out. It wasn't improving. I didn't know what they were going to do, and I was really getting worried about my son. I was actually getting sick with worry. So I woke up about 4 a.m, which is what I normally do. And I thought, I have to have a mantra for this. There has to be something I can do. You just, as a parent, you feel so helpless in a situation like that. And I got up and I started searching online, and I found the Medicine Buddha mantra. I thought, Medicine Buddha, that sounds like that's the ticket. Like, that sounds like exactly what I need right now. So I watched quite a number of different variations of it to sort of get the rhythm of it and get at least one variation of the pronunciation. I'm not an expert in Sanskrit, but I attempt to at least imitate the best I can. And so I found it. I wrote a simple melody that I thought I could sing repeatedly. So that was what I practiced that morning. My son went off to school. I worked through the morning. By the time I got to noon, I was so stressed out worrying about him that I literally went to bed. I was in bed for a couple of hours. Then it was getting to be the point where I needed to go get him from school, take him back to the doctor again. I thought, I have to get out of bed. I have to do this. I'm going to go and record this mantra. So I came downstairs with almost no preparation at all, just sat down, sang it into a microphone for 10 or 11 minutes, saved it on my computer, and then went off to pick him up at school. Sure enough, when we go into the nurse's office, she came out to greet us in the waiting room, and she said, well, he's going to have surgery today. And we thought we were just there to have the wound cleaned. Now, it is true that we had an appointment with the doctor. They were trying to schedule us once a week with a doctor, and then in between, we'd have nurses and nurse practitioners, doing the actual changing for the dressing on the wound. But there had been a miscommunication, and apparently we should have been there at like 9:30 that morning for the doctor to see it, but I had misunderstood. And the nurse practitioner had talked to the doctor about what she'd seen over the last 3 weeks. And in our absence, I guess the decision had been made, which was a good decision. They needed to just do the surgery immediately. They couldn't wait anymore to clear up the infection. It wasn't working. So there we were, just in our street clothes, not even a bottle of water with us, no preparation, no toothbrush, no pajamas, nothing. And go upstairs, and they brought him in, prepped him for surgery right away. As I said, this is in the middle of COVID. No one else could be there. None of his siblings could come. His father was allowed to come to see him in the recovery room and then had to go home. So I was all alone. The hospital was absolutely deserted. I went into the waiting room just outside the operating room, and there was a big grand piano. So I sat down, and I was just plunking on the piano, trying to remember the Medicine Buddha mantra that I had just written and just practiced and never heard of until that morning. So I was there in this, deserted, it was like, like a movie. I mean, it's black outside, by this time it's late, it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm just absolutely alone playing this mantra, waiting to hear from my son. And when the doctor called, he said, well, it was worse than I thought. One of the reasons why I haven't put this on video before is it is difficult to tell the story. So the doctor was telling me how many centimeters by how many centimeters, wide and deep and long this surgical wound is. It's too large for him to suture, and that my son is going to be on a wound vac to keep it sanitary, and that the wound will have to heal from within. And I'm not really getting what he's saying. What do you mean? What are you talking about? How big is it? Like, I couldn't calculate in centimeters. I'm used to inches, but, And he said, well, let me put it to you this way. If the wound is healed by Christmas, I will be happy. And I'm thinking, Christmas? My God, it was September. My son is going to be on a machine? He said, well, he won't necessarily have to be on a machine the whole time, but he will have to be on a machine until the skin has formed and the danger of infection is decreased. The wound should be healed up by Christmas. I went upstairs, after my husband and I saw my son in the recovery room. And of course, he was so drugged at this point, coming out of anesthesia. This was such an extensive wound. Basically, they had to go all the way to the spine. So there's some fibrous tissue that is between the bone, that covers the tip of the bone. So they went all the way to that and all the way to the bone and had to take all of the soft tissue. So it was a wound from the base of the spine almost to the rectum and going up on the sides, all of the soft tissue, but not muscle, down to the bone, but but not muscle. So I guess that means it was very fortunate. It meant that he would heal without disabilities as long as he healed cleanly without infection. He had nerve pain medication and standard, pain medications, and then he still had some of the anesthesia, so he was like, he didn't feel anything. So we went upstairs, and I slept in a chair next to his bed, and all night long, every time I woke up, the Medicine Buddha mantra was playing in my head. And that was my comfort through the night. So the next morning, they come in. They had a team of a wound specialist doctor and 3 others, so it took 4 people to dress his wound for the first time after the surgery and to install the wound vac, basically. They asked me, do you faint easily? And I said, no, I don't. They said, well, that's good, because the sight of that wound fresh after the surgery, it was cavernous. It was just unbelievable. I could even see the reaction of the medical people standing around his bed, like no one said a word. So what they had to do is they layered it. They put down like a very thin plastic. I think of it like a fake skin, and then a layer of foam. And then I think in the beginning there was another layer of plastic, and it was porous plastic, more foam. And then they had to tape it all. And then they put like a tube in that would keep the wound draining, drain out blood, drain out, fluids to keep it clean and bacteria free. And then there was a pump, so at that point it was, pretty big, sitting on the floor, constantly pumping and draining the wound. And, it's sort of an eerie thing to get used to that sound all the time. Then they said, we have to find a portable one, so that we can release him from the hospital, and then he'll come back 3 times a week, and we'll change everything. So they got the portable one. We went home, and I sat down and took the recording that I had done and did a slideshow of his life, sent it to 40, 45 people, people that knew me, that knew my son, that I thought would want to pray for him or use the Medicine Buddha mantra, to send him positive healing energy. I had a friend who lent me a statue of the Medicine Buddha, which is beautiful. It's usually blue. And then another friend had a thangka. So I have this room is where I chant, do my spiritual practices. And so I had, the thangka, and I had the statue right there, like as a visualization. And then anyone who was online, and I did not publish that publicly. That only went out on a private link, because that wouldn't be fair to my son. He doesn't want to be on display publicly. And then I created a version that did not have his photos, that was just a still and an image of the Medicine Buddha that I put out publicly, and that is still published. So for the next few months, that was like the rallying chant, the rallying cry, I guess you could call it. And it was quite an ordeal. He did get an infection. We did have to look at second surgery at one point. The infectious disease specialist got called in. They had to experiment with all kinds of different antibiotics. It was quite the thing. And by Christmas, he had the wound vac until Halloween. And then I took over in November, doing all of the nursing care, changing the bandages at that point twice a day, because he'd had these infections, and 3 times a week was not enough to keep it clean. So we started twice a day. We did that until just before Christmas. And sure enough, just before Christmas, the wound had healed over. So the danger of infection was gone. And he did return to school in January. The nurses in the wound clinic told me it will be an entire year before all of it is normalized, because there was so much tissue removed. Before, he would want to get on a bike and, go riding 50 miles on a bike, or, before he could just live without ever even thinking about it again. And that was probably true. I think even by the next summer, he still had some level of fatigue. I mean, it was a lot of healing to do. By the time the next year of school came around, he was fine. Joined the swim team, had never been a swimmer, got himself in incredible shape. And it's all It's all in the past now, except when, except if I have to think about it or talk about it. So maybe after this video, I can just refer people to the video, and then I won't have to tell the story much again. But it's an incredible mantra, and I think it can be used for healing on many levels. The words Tayata Om, Bekandze Bekandze, Maha Bekandze, Randze Samu Gate. Bekandze is repeated 3 times because it's for healing on 3 levels. The physical level that he was dealing with, and then also the mental or psychological, and then the spiritual level. The Maha Bekandze is the healing of the spirit, the healing of the soul. So Maha is great. So it's like great healing. So the greatest healing for all of us would be, the healing of our soul. And the medicine Buddha is considered to be like he's a doctor who is dispensing healing through his teachings, through his vibration even. So that is the medicine Buddha mantra.